Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of CA Ultra. On this episode, we are actually not going to really talk about specific Ultra news like we normally do, mostly because, to be frank, there is none. So until the Ultra decide to either officially sign methods or bans, or decide who those 5th and potentially 6th sub spots are going to go to, we're just going to talk about regular, everyday Call of Duty news, and there has been a bunch this week, so I'm very excited to talk about it. Obviously, the number one thing being skill-based matchmaking, the potential of a Gears of War pro named Mental joining the CDL. We're then going to go over a quick recap of the rosters that have officially been announced, including Seattle, which was announced today. And then finally, we're going to give our thoughts on the potential bubble for the CDL season. With that out of the way, I'm your host, Spencer. With me is Chris. Chris, how's it going?
Pretty good, man. I'm really stoked to talk a little bit more about CDL in general.
Yeah.
Covering just the Toronto Ultra is a lot of fun. I enjoy that, but I also have a lot of thoughts on things that are happening within the system, and I hope you guys like them.
Yep, totally agree. Well, so with that out of the way, let's just jump right into this. And the first thing on the list is, of course, going to be skill-based matchmaking. Now, this really hit the stride with the Cold War Alpha that came out. For those of you who don't know, the Cold War Alpha, and obviously, to be fair, Modern Warfare before that, had really, really intense skill-based matchmaking in the public game lobby. So what that meant was if you saw pro players like Scump and Dashy and Methods, obviously we're all queuing up. It started out well, and then eventually, they were playing against pro players the entire day. Yourself, if you were playing the Alpha, you might have noticed something similar where, 1 or 2 games in, you're going like 35-4, and the next thing you know, you have Gunless in your lobby. So this sparked an internal debate throughout the community of Call of Duty, but honestly, gaming as a whole, as to whether or not skill-based matchmaking should be in the game. So I'm going to hand this one off to you, Chris. Should skill-based matchmaking be in Call of Duty?
Yeah, so I think that it should be in Call of Duty if there is no ranked system.
Mm-hmm.
If there is a ranked system, I think that in quick play, it really shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's certain games that have skill-based matchmaking all around, like Overwatch has skill-based matchmaking in its quick play and ranked. And then there is, Call of Duty that has it just all around. And I think that it makes more sense to not have skill-based matchmaking when there's ranked. If you're in like a giant lobby, if it is something that's more just a small tight group of people, 6v6, it makes more sense, like Overwatch, it makes more sense to have that skill-based matchmaking. But when you're in a large lobby, like 20, 30 people, I like the idea of having a large range of individuals to run into. If I'm looking to have fun,
So
I'm not looking to sweat.
I think that like Modern Warfare and stuff like that, I actually think the Ground War, and I don't know if Cold War was the same, but their versions of the larger lobbies I actually don't think had skill-based matchmaking. Maybe I'm wrong. I think Modern Warfare, that was the whole reason why people played Ground War, was because there was no skill-based matchmaking. They only had skill-based matchmaking in the pugs, which were usually 6v6. I'm pretty much of agreement with you, though, that I think that in my opinion, we can have the debate over whether or not skill-based matchmaking should be in if there's a ranked player or not, but I think this just comes back to the whole idea of there should be a ranked play, right? This is a massive esport that you're trying to grow. There was $25 million just to enter the league. There's a ton of financial backing. And path to pro is extremely important. And while obviously the challenger scene is really good in Call of Duty, and it's something that I hope that they improve upon, having a leaderboard, having a ranking system where these players can grind out and sort of make a name for themselves, I think is extremely important. So once you get past the whole hey, ranked play should absolutely be a thing, I think that the pug version or the quick play version, whatever you want to call it, obviously needs some sort of skill-based matchmaking. I don't think anybody wants it to just be totally random, right? I've seen you play Call of Duty, Chris. If you go into a couple of lobbies and you get a Scump lobby and the next lobby you go up against Gunless, you're going to quit the game and you're not going to come back. Obviously those players should never play, I think, people like us, right? There should be some sort of a little bit of skill-based matchmaking where you're playing similar tiers of people of your player, but those tiers should be much broader. So should Scump always be going up against the top 1%? Obviously not, right? Players want to sit back and relax and try new guns too. He was even mentioning, how it would be trying to grind camos by using weird guns and only going for headshots, and how impossible that would be if you're going up against, streamers and top tier professional players trying to make a name for themselves using meta weapons every single time. So I think that it's important that there be some level of skill-based matchmaking. I just think it needs to be a lot broader in just your average pickup game, assuming ranked play is a thing.
Yeah, you know what? I totally understand what you're saying. It definitely is disheartening to get into a lobby with a ton of different individuals and be slapped.
Yeah.
I just like to think about it more on an interaction level basis. Even if I'm getting to a lobby with 20 other people, there's going to be those scums there, and I'm going to get slapped by them all the time. But um, uh, with the amount of different interactions that I'm having, I'm going to have a lot of positive experiences on the other end of things too. So I don't think it's like enough to warrant like saying like, oh, we need skill-based matchmaking. For me, it's very easy to just like say no skill-based matchmaking. You're going to casual to play casually. If it's skill-based matchmaking, I'm still kind of gonna have, even though I'm not gonna be exposed to scum, I'm still gonna kind of have to be a little sweaty in order to perform well.
Yeah.
And I'd rather just kind of save that for ranked. And that once again brings it to the larger discussion. Ranked, I don't know why the heck they don't have one.
It needs to be in there.
They say they're focusing on Warzone, but this is the biggest title in the world. They come up with a new game every year. They have a lot of people working on it. It's clear that's making money. Like, why don't you have ranked? It's probably the reason why I don't play multiplayer.
Oh, I totally agree. I would grind multiplayer so much more if there was a ranked play. I mean, I would still be poor. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not sitting here saying like, hey, I'd be the top. Like, I understand who I am as a player, right? I'm like an above average. Like, if the middle of the ground is like high gold, low platinum, I'm like high platinum. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like right on that cusp of just your average gamer. But it's still fun to give yourself something to strive for. You know what I mean? To improve upon. And again, the path to pro is so important. I want to watch Kleenex go into ranked play and try to grind the leaderboard. I want to be able to be like, yo, Cammy just hit number 5 in the world in Search and Destroy, like whatever. Like, that's really cool. Like, in my opinion, there's no reason why that shouldn't be a thing. And if you're already having heavy skill-based matchmaking, there's already some level of elo system in play in Call of Duty already. Just put a number behind it and put it in a ranked format, because I would love to see it. The final thing I want to bring up was sort of this like paper that actually came out. I believe it was a developer that said skill-based matchmaking isn't actually skill-based matchmaking that you think about. The goal of skill-based matchmaking isn't to put you in a lobby with players of your caliber every single game. It's actually sort of trying to like weight the dice, if you will, where the game will intentionally put you in weaker lobbies so that you can perform well like 2 times, 3 times in a row, and then hit you with like 1 or 2 games where you're sort of supposed to lose, and then sort of even out the game for like the 6th game so it becomes really close. It was really interesting that they like almost like cooked the books in terms of how you actually play, because it's shown that actually has the highest level of retention amongst new players. And it's an interesting point, because at some point, if that's what the data shows, like, who am I to argue with them, right? And be like, well, no, I don't want it in the game at all. Because at the end of the day, in order for Call of Duty to grow, it needs to grow new players. It's something Overwatch struggles with. That's very important. So they're able to do that by some level of skill-based matchmaking. Obviously, I agree with it. I just think it needs to be toned down a bit. Because again, I don't want it to be every single game I play, I'm sweating my ass off just to get a 1.2 KD. And I don't want it to be where pros stop playing online because they just end up playing pros all the time, right? Content is king.
They're already doing that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree with you. I understand the need to be able to rig the system like that. If it is like that, you know what? They're running a business. They have a product. They need to be able to cater everybody's mind. That's what every other company does in every other industry. So it makes total sense. And you know what? If that is the case, and they're throwing me some good games amongst the bad ones, whatever.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. So let's move on to the next topic, which of course is going to be Mental joining, apparently, it's rumors, sorry, this is not confirmed, the Los Angeles Guerrillas. Now, for those of you who don't know, Mental is a former Gears of War professional. He, over the offseason, basically, he just recently won the championship and then said sort of like, I want to retire and pursue a career in Call of Duty. He's one of, as far as I can tell, obviously not from the Gears community, but one of, if not the greatest player of all time, or at least up in the upper echelon of Gears of War's players. He's consistently been a champion amongst multiple different titles across multiple different years, and he's now taken a swing at Call of Duty. And the rumor is that LA Guerrillas have signed him to a substitute position. Now, this sparked a massive debate amongst the community. Obviously, some people thought that he wasn't deserving of that spot, that he didn't go through challengers, that there was players who have earned it over him. It's very reminiscent of when Chips had joined Philadelphia Fusion, for all you Overwatch fans out there. So, Chris, I kind of want to hear your initial thoughts on, do you think a player like like Mental, arguably one of the greatest controller players of all time, a former champion in another esport, deserves to come into the CDL and immediately receive a roster spot. Not a starting spot. I want to make that very clear, but a roster spot.
Yeah, no, I totally think that's okay. That's totally fine. You know what? It's just how the world works. Sometimes it's not fair. You know, if you have somebody who's really damn good at what they do, it's okay for them to, you know, transfer those skills. And I think with esports in particular, a lot of different esports have extremely transferable skill sets. You know, you see Corey and Sinatra from Overwatch. They went straight to Valorant, and they joined, I think at least Sinatra joined Sentinels, which won some tournaments and did quite damn well.
Sentinels is one of the best Valorant teams in the world. Sinatra was a projectile DPS player, right? He was playing things like Genji.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's very clear that there are some transferable points to this. And even in traditional sports it happens. I know that individuals from, you know, rugby went and joined rosters on the NFL. You know, it's something that's extremely doable. And I think that people who are in amateurs, who, you know, are just like, I didn't get picked up, blah, blah, blah. I think they should, you know, really be focusing on improving themselves first. And let's also be clear. It's not like a ton of individuals are just flooding over from Gears and stuff. This is literally like the top individual in Gears of War. This is the guy who has just cracked aim all the time with, I think, no aim assist on Gears of War, which is absolutely nuts.
I don't know about that. There might be aim assist in Gears of War. It's still a console game, but we'll see.
Anyway, yeah.
We don't watch Gears of War, so I don't want to get too much into the details of Gears of War because, like, I'm not going to sit here and act like either of us have, you know, watched the final tournament.
Yeah, you're right. But yeah, that's kind of, I think it's totally reasonable, and people should really people should be okay with it.
Yeah, I think when you're not okay with something like this, it's one of those instances where you aren't necessarily like, you don't get the big picture of things, right? It's one of those things where it's like, I think you're kind of right, where who cares if it's not fair? It's not, if there's an amateur player out there who I think was going to be better than Mental, and either their upside, their ability to sell sponsorships, all that sort of things, like they'd already be signed, right? Like these top tier amateur players are getting signed. They're already getting opportunities. You saw that all throughout the year. The reason you sign a guy like Mental, like if your argument is, hey, he should be in the challenger scenes before so we can see what he's capable of, I mean, that's why he gets a sub spot. It's so that you can put him in the challenger scene, have him develop, and if he hits that peak that some people think he might, then you call him up. And if he doesn't, well, then he just plays challengers and you get some eyes on your challengers and you get some people talking about your brand before the beginning of the year starts, right? There's like sort of a no-lose situation, because obviously, like, if you put him in the challenger scene and you see what he's capable of, and let's say he absolutely dominates, right? Hypothetically, just give me this. Let's just say he dominates the challenger scene. He comes in, they win the first two tournaments, and he's, you know, MVP of both. And let's also say simultaneously, the Huntsmen start off to a really slow start because there's just too many egos, right? Dashy and Scump are butting heads. It's not working out between them, and somebody's got to go. If you're Mental and you have call, you know, number one on line one is the GM from the LA Gorillas being like, hey, come play with us and, you know, Vivid. And on line number two, it's Hector being like, hey, come play with us and Scump. You're doing amazing. Obviously, you're going to pick Chicago. So, like, at some point, you got to buy early on these players. It's like buying stocks. You got to buy early so you can see the most amount of return on your investment, because if he goes in challenges and pops off, there's going to be 6 different teams calling him up, being like, hey, we want you to play for us. And if you're a team like the LA Gorillas, you're just going to miss out. So I obviously understand from their perspective why they got to take that risk. It's also not the first time somebody's used a starting or a substitute spot for content creators. Hector did it with, you know, Mbos and stuff like that. I don't know why he didn't get a lot of shit at the start of the year, but all of a sudden the LAGR, I think him getting a spot is more than reasonable. It's just one of those things where they're taking a risk on a player who they think has a ton of upside, and if it works out, they look like geniuses. And if it doesn't, who cares? It's a substitute spot. It'd be one thing if he was on the starting roster. If he was on the starting roster, It's different.
You're buying that stock before everybody else is saying buy. Because by the time everybody else is saying buy, all the upside's gone.
Yeah, you missed it. Exactly. It's like, oh man, like, hey, don't buy Apple yet. Let's wait and see if, you know, the iPad really catches on or the computers really catch on. It's like, yeah, but I mean, once they've caught on, everyone's already bought the stock, and now you're competing with a bunch. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like it's.
And that's your risk reward trade off. You're obviously taking a higher risk, and you have a higher payout if you're getting this guy now.
Yeah.
And if he proves himself later on, You have obviously lower risk, but your payout is lower. He's spending more money on him.
Exactly. So overall, I think it's a good pickup. Again, starting spot would be a different conversation. Obviously, I think he doesn't deserve to walk in and immediately start, but he's not taking anybody's job, right? Like they wanted him for a reason. He's gonna play in the substitute. Excuse me. If another amateur player dominates throughout the amateur scene next year, I guarantee you, they're gonna get another spot as well.
Okay. What's next on the list?
Just a quick little roster recap. So there's been a couple of teams that have been announced since we last spoke. The big one, by far the biggest one, obviously is going to be the FaZe roster. The new dynasty, in my opinion, of Abizi, Simp, Selim, and Arcides. I'm like borderline ready to automatically just give them the ring already. Like that has to be one of the deadliest rosters I've ever seen. You literally have 3 MVP candidates from the previous season, and the one person who wasn't is Abizi. Who's arguably better than all of them. Like, this is an insanely stacked roster. Then you have Minnesota, who got Priesta, Attach, Major Maniac, and Accuracy. Talk about them a little bit more. And the new one that was announced today is actually Seattle Surge, which is Pristini, Looney, Gunless, and Octane.
Yeah. You know what? Atlanta FaZe, they better get some good results next year because I'm sure their pocketbooks are going to be hurting a little bit with all the money they're dishing out.
Oh, they will.
For those players.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we can everyone's talked about it. That's one of the deadliest rosters. I think that's arguably, if I said, what's your dream roster? You had the pick of anybody in the league. I think you could argue that would be the best roster that you could hypothetically put together. So that roster is insane. Now, getting into the Minnesota roster, you have Priesta, Major Maniac come over and join Attach and Accuracy, who used to play for the NYSL, I believe. That one's a little bit more interesting. I think there's some good talent there. Again, I think there's some solid players. Attach is really good SMG. Accuracy is a good main AR. Priest, I think, is a really good flex. Major Maniac probably would actually end up playing the flex in this instance, and Priesta would play the sub. So I think it's like got some weird roles. It's a pretty slow team, but if 4v4 really does slow down and this game isn't as fast paced as like a Modern Warfare or a Black Ops 4, I think they could do some damage. But I do think that it's one of those teams where I think they need to use their sub spot well, where they need to get somebody in there with pace who can potentially come in and speed that team up if they do struggle.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I honestly know nothing about 4v4, so I don't know if it's going to slow down.
I think it will, but how much is a question?
I don't know
That's
why,
game dependent.
I don't know why it would. There's more space for people to take, right?
Yeah, it's like a slower game because like individual engagements mean more, and I think playing your life is like more impactful because trades aren't as prevalent. So if you get like one pick, it's more impactful for you to stay alive. I don't know. We'll see, right? Like there's risk there. And actually, I think like Major Maniac and Priesta going to Minnesota, like as an Ultra fan, I was kind of like, shit. Wouldn't those two look good alongside Cammy? Like that would have been an interesting pickup, but it is what it is. They're in Minnesota, and I think that team's going to be interesting. And then the final team, which just got announced today, which is actually Seattle Surge, and that, of course, is going to be Octane, Gunless, Looney, and Pristini, which, in my opinion, obviously has the potential to be good. If these players hit, it's a good team, right? Octane and Gunless are arguably the best AR flex. Sorry, one of the best flex main AR combos I think you can build around. But then I think supplementing those players with 2 SMGs of Looney and Pristini is extremely risky, especially when you got to consider Gunless himself is already like somewhat of a risky play. So I was really surprised that with those 2 talented players, Looney and Pristini were the 2 they decided to like supplement them with, because again, like obviously we're Ultra fans, so like Looney had a terrible year both on the game, in the game, and off of it. So I'm kind of surprised they picked him up. Obviously, they have history, and he was better in 4v4, so maybe he can turn it around. Pristini's risky.
This is what makes me think, like when people say, Call of Duty League is the friendly league or whatever you call it.
Friendship League, yeah.
Friendship League. This is kind of what makes me think of that. It's the Friendship League, if you have Looney on there. See, he gave no reason.
He used to play with Gunless. He used to play with,
It literally is that. Like, there's no reason why he should be picked up this year. He gave us no reason to keep him on the team on Ultra. And I think that the other people out there that perform better than him that didn't get a spot.
Yeah, and people are saying they're going like, sorry, I'm cutting you off, but just because I want to give you, because some people are like, what? It's Looney. How do you see him in 2018? But like, some people are like, yeah, like he was a monster on 4v4. I was like, man, he was a monster 2 years ago when he was, 25, not 28 on World War II, which is arguably an extremely different game than one we're currently going to be playing. Like, that's not a good enough reason to pick him up, in my opinion. That's so risky. Like, since age obviously plays a part, the game mechanics play a part, new talent coming in plays a part. Like, how are you? Like, this team should have been after John. This team should have been after young SMG players like Pred and Hydra and Fire, and maybe they will. Maybe their sub spot is going to be somebody pretty good who they think can supplement, because between Pristini and Looney, I think you're lucky if one of those guys hits, and there's a potential they might need 2 or 3 subs on that team. So it's extremely risky, although if it works, Octane Gunless, and if Looney, the leadership is there and he can keep Gunless in check, and Pristini is sort of a really good player who a lot of people think he is, it's a good team. But damn, is that risky.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
And then,
it
final
is a
point.
risky play, and if it works out, it works out. Great, good for Looney, good for them.
Yeah.
I don't think it will.
The final thing, I think we'll answer this one pretty quickly because I think we're both on the same page. That is, of course, the rumors about the bubble for the next 2021 season. In my opinion, no, right? I think the NBA, MLB had to do it. 1, they're much more successful leagues. 2, they have no other option. If you want to play NBA, you got to be in person. Call of Duty has the ability. Sorry, what?
And B, they're doing it for a couple months.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not sure how long the proposed CDL was. I think it might have been a couple months. But it doesn't even matter. You can literally play online. Is online as good as LAN? Obviously not. Would I love to have in-person events? Absolutely. If it's feasible, I would love to make the switch from online to in-person for the remainder of the season. If that ever becomes an option in 2021 or 2022, whatever the technical year will be, we will see. However, in the current thing, in my opinion, play online and maybe have 2 to 4 major tournaments throughout the year where you can be kind of like how the Overwatch League did it, where they had monthly tournaments, but maybe it's every other month, where you'll have the regular season tournaments online, wins will, whatever, you get the same point system, and then you have big tournaments at the end that are in LAN at the end, every other month, and have wins and points and stuff associated with those, and then obviously B Bubble for the champs. So I think that would probably be the best solution. Some people say 2 tournaments. I think you can maybe do 4, but
I only really see Bubble for the champs as being the only feasible thing. Still, if they're doing a couple bubbles throughout the year, it's still 14 days quarantine before, 14 days quarantine after. It's pretty hard on the players.
Yeah. Honestly, the 14 days quarantine after, you could obviously still play. Obviously, it's easier. It's selfish. I mean, you can still play. They can't obviously go outside and stuff like that, but they can still play. Yeah. You're not wrong.
They can't go outside, right?
I don't know. Is the travel restriction still that? I thought it was only that if you used a plane. Maybe you could use for 2 major tournaments, have them where it's not, you drive them in or something. I don't know.
The thing is that if you're a tournament who's held liable to their health, you're just gonna do that. You're not gonna be oh, we took a bus, so it's kind of okay.
Oh no, I mean the 2 weeks there before you'd have to quarantine. I meant the 2 weeks after, but whatever. I'm getting into stuff that I don't really know about, the logistics of quarantine versus no quarantine. I think we're both in agreement that this would be a bit of a mistake, and I think even the owners, I saw Adam kind of tweet about it where he was yeah, I don't know who's leaking this, but this is not what we're talking about. So I just want to touch on that briefly because I think it was obviously big news. We should bring it up, but I'm glad that we're both on the same page. With that out of the way, any closing thoughts here, Chris?
No, I don't. I'm excited for this offseason, though. I just really want to hear what's going on with the Toronto Ultra. Adam, if you're listening to this, please come out with the roster.
Announce the 5th and the 6th. I think Method's and Bands will return, but we'll see. Again, guys, thank you so much for watching. I know it's not our normal Ultra content, just doing a little bit more general stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Leave a comment down below. What do you think? Do you think Mental should be in the CDL? What do you think of the new rosters? What do you think of skill-based matchmaking? We'd love to have those sort of debates in the comment section below. Thank you for watching, and as always, enjoy.